All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. This is episode 84 of BIM After Dark Live, and we're going to be talking about coordination and 3D coordination or model coordination, depending on how you want to call it. Before we jump into this episode, I did want to say that there are two episodes that you should definitely watch after this or before it. If you're here live, hang out with me because it'll be fun. But there's an episode that I did with Scott Davis a year ago called BIM 360 Explained. And there was an episode I did even before that, probably like 18 months ago, in which I talked about the overall process of 3D coordination and mapped it out and sort of ran through that. I will link them below in the links so you can definitely check that out. But today we're going to be focused on cloud coordination, mainly focused on the model coordination tool within the Autodesk Construction Cloud and /BIM 360 platforms. With really the main goal in my mind, getting you guys to use it. And by you guys, I actually mean architects and engineers. I mean the design team. If you're a contractor, if you're a subcontractor, if you're a construction manager, etc., then obviously hang out and you're going to be wanting to learn this stuff too. But really, I want to focus this on design teams and how this tool can almost automatically do your clash detection for you. I find that as a designer myself, as an architect myself, the challenge always was Revit's a pretty awful interference check tool within it. It's not conducive to efficiently manage and go through clashes. So a lot of times design teams, the process of exporting models, bringing them into Navisworks, combining, clashing, find items tool, all that stuff is just non-conducive to the design process. And so it doesn't happen as much. So what I want to talk about today is really using the environment that exists within this BIM 360/ACC. And I guess I'll say BIM 360/ACC every time. I might just want to say one of them, and I mean both, but whatever. and so within this environment, when you set up your Revit files correctly, and then you set up your coordination space correctly, it's pretty much happening for you. You still have to go in and look at them, sure, but the tedious task of going through and managing, organizing your clashes and all that stuff that happens in Navisworks is pretty much gone. And my humble opinion, and I know I put it in the title, and I think it's a little controversial, but I do believe that this tool is marking the end of Navisworks as we know it. As someone who uses Navisworks on a daily basis and works with teams who do as well, I understand there are limitations still on both sides of it, but it's only a few features that will actually get us to the point where it does that. So super excited to show this to you guys and run through this, as well as take your questions if you're here live. As usual, I will be checking out the questions as I go through the content. Before I do jump into the content, I wanted to say hi to everyone in the chat. I see Sean Page is here, Scott Davis, who was part of that episode that I mentioned. He's hanging out here too from Autodesk, and so if there's a question for the cloud that you guys have that I can't answer, I'm hoping I'll be able to answer most of them. I've been living in this environment for quite some time, but if not, I'm sure Scott will be able to jump in for us, which is awesome. Rick is here, a bunch of returning audience members. You guys are awesome. So feel free to keep the chat active. Obviously, I'm myself tonight. There's no guests, so it may be a little harder for me to follow along to the chat, but I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on the questions as we go through. This season of BIM After Dark, which is this little fall season here of 2022, is supported by the BIM After Dark community, actually. And so what is that? That is a private community that I run over at community.bimafterdark.com. And what you can see over there, let me just lower the volume. Every time I always have the volume too loud. And what you can see over in the community is that is a private place to really level up your Revit and also join with other people doing the same with you. So this is kind of what it looks like on the inside. We have a news feed here, which is very social media-esque, but you can ask your Revit questions. For example, Ian, who may even be in the chat here tonight, is asking a question about this particular schedule, that general notes that we're trying to work through with him of different ways to produce that in Revit. Sometimes I have little things called bad notepad where as I'm going through a specific project or tutorial or something, I'll share it, including sample files. Many of you saw the modern kitchen series that just wrapped up. Well, if you're a member of the community, you get to download that Revit sample file. So an awesome little spot there. We also have full-length courses. And so if I head over to courses, you can see I have 4 full-length courses with sample files and progressive chapters that you can go through. And so the 4 courses focus on presentations, documentation, Dynamo, and family creation. And then within them, they also have the full sample files. And what's really nice about it is even within the course content, there is an area where you can actually comment, you can chat, and you can work through problems if you have them. And you can also have a direct contact to me. We also do events. We do office hours in which we do Zoom calls with myself and other members. Sometimes we have guests like Sir Paul Aubin was on not too long ago. And we walk through whatever is hot on your case for that day. So if you have a specific question, you can jump into the call and you can you can work through it with us, myself, or even other members can help. So if you're interested in joining, please head on over to community.bimafterdark.com. I am running a sale from now until the end of this season in honor of you guys watching this and hopefully supporting me. So head on over there. It's the lowest price I've ever had for this, and you'll have access to all of that information as well as the sample files and me. So with all that, let me jump back to my camera here and check out the chat there. It sounds like there might be a little bit of a delay, according to what you guys are saying, from my voice to my audio to video. I apologize if that's the case. I actually noticed it a little bit, but I wasn't sure if it was between the lag there. It might be something weird with my audio interface. But we're live, and I'm not going to try to troubleshoot that right now because I do not want to derail this whole topic. So I apologize with that. I'll make my face a little smaller when I'm doing the demo, and you guys don't have to go through that. Hopefully I can do it in the post-processing. It's not you. Yeah, it looks like everyone's sorry, guys. All good. We got Sean Page from Iowa. How's it going? Steph from Vancouver. I love Vancouver so much. Okay. So let's jump into this topic here. So I'm not going to run through the process of coordination in general, because I think that episode that I mentioned before, which I will link to below after this, is a great overview of the process. I'll mention it as we go throughout. But if this is the first time you're hearing the term 3D coordination or model coordination, basically it's clash detection in so many terms. It's looking at, hey, are my pipes hitting my ducts? Are my ducts hitting my steel? Are my pipes and steel below the ceilings? Usually we're talking mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems against other disciplines, including themselves. Sometimes you might bring in other architectural disciplines for coordination as well. But that's kind of what we're talking about here. And so for those of you who have not experienced that process, I think you should definitely check out those episodes, and I'm going to give you a little overview of how this tool can make it super simple for you to run through it. So all of that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sample file here that we're going to pretend is our architectural model with an MEP model linked into it, and I'm going to publish it to BIM 360. I pre-published it because one of the downfalls is the processing time right now, which I'll talk about as we go through. I'm going to show you how to set up your Revit model for this coordination piece, publishing your views, using this clash matrix in model coordination, which you guys may have seen some marketing content for. Or maybe you jumped in model coordination, you said, what the hell is this thing that I'm looking at? And then also running through how you can open those models, how you can run through the clashes in the cloud, how you can actually manage those issues and then push them into Revit to fix the clash that's there, and then update, synchronize, and refresh and go through the process. So really how to set up this tool so that you get to do what you do best, which is design and engineer buildings, and you can let this tool do most of the heavy lifting, and you can check it on periodic moments in time. So with that, I think we'll just jump right into it. And I'm going to keep, like I said, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. Again, I'm sorry if there's the delay with the audio video here, but it is what it is. Hopefully it sounds good at least. It sounds pretty good in my headphones. So if it sounds good and it's off, I'm okay with that. Okay. So this is a sample file that I have here. And if you look at it, there's some MEP systems. There's a link, actually, I'll select it. It's a link right here. I'll isolate it real quickly. So the link is, you could see it's actually made up of some fabrication parts, as well as some regular old MEP systems. So you can see there's a pipe running through a little clash you got there. I don't think we need a tool to see that, but we're going to use it anyways. And then you've got some fabrication elements too, just add a little something to it. You could see that this is actually an architectural and steel model combined. And so this could be a link with the steel, but just for the sake of argument, I have, so we have two models. We have an MEP model and we have an architectural model. There's a roof, there's some walls, and then there's a ceiling. And if I look underneath, there's a you know, a little ceiling there with a grid, and you can see there's these really lame air diffusers that I have in here. This is a project that I use all the time when I'm teaching MEP Revit to folks, and so it is what it is. I haven't updated it in a while as far as the diffuser is concerned. Okay, so first things first. The process I'm going to use is assuming you're using Revit Cloud Worksharing. However, you don't have to even do what I'm showing you here, as long as you have a BIM 360 server project. I'm also not going to go through the whole Revit, what kind of, or Autodesk, what kind of license you have, Pro or Building BIM 360 Pro. I don't even know what they're called anymore. You can talk about that with the reseller. If you want model coordination, talk to Autodesk or the reseller and figure out what plan you need to be on to get it, because I don't even know what they're called anymore. But basically, if you have that set up, I have to imagine that you're probably using design collaboration, which is model or Revit Cloud Worksharing. And so I'm going to use sort of that concept in mind, where by using Revit Cloud Worksharing, this is semi-automatically happening in the background. If you don't use Revit Cloud Worksharing and for some reason you have a BIM 360 server for whatever reason and you're not using Revit Cloud Worksharing, you can still sort of set this up the way I'm talking about, even if you're just dragging and uploading your file, for your local Revit file. Let's say it's not even a Workshared file. You can still actually set up these views the way that we want, and you can still publish them into the cloud space as needed. Part of the reason why it's not confused. Yes, Scott, confused. We'll name it again. Yes, I don't even bother with names anymore. But I work under an enterprise license for most of my stuff, so I don't even know what half of that stuff is called. But all I know is the tool we're using is Model Coordination, which exists in both Autodesk Construction Cloud and BIM 360. So however you want to get that, you can talk to Autodesk about that. So anyways, what you can do is you can actually Workshare this and use Revit Cloud Worksharing, which is ideal because then you're just not uploading and downloading files and dealing with versioning that way. But you can also use it in local Revit copies or non-Workshared if you're just uploading them, and I'll talk about that in a second. But really, what it comes down to when you're using any of these tools for the BIM 360/ACC environment, when you're using Revit within it, the biggest takeaway that I can give you is to set up your publish settings. Okay, and if you guys saw the video that I posted on Monday about the Autodesk free viewer, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's the same process that exists there. So what I mean by publish settings is if I'm in this file here and I go over to collaborate, whether I'm Workshared or not, publish settings exists right here. Okay, so let me just highlight that again. Let me close it here because it's grayed out. So under collaborate, publish settings. So if you open Revit right now and start a brand new file, publish settings is a button that you can click. Okay. That's something that I would say from now on moving forward, something you should always keep in mind is to make sure that you're always creating sets and using them in published settings, regardless of what you're using, just because of the fact that it's going to help when it comes to this use moving forward. So this file, right, it's a central file, so if I save to central right now, it's doing its cloud work sharing thing, right? But the key with linking and publishing links within the BIM 360/ACC environment is that both models have to be on the BIM 360 ACC environment, okay? And they have to be in the project. So if I go to document management, they don't have to necessarily be in the exact same spot as long as there's a team set up, but we're not going to go through that ordeal. So let's just say for the sake of argument. So you could see my MEP file is right here and my Arc and Structural file is right here. If my if my MEP file was sitting locally, or maybe it was in a different location and not cloud work shared or whatever, I would be able to see it in my local file. But if I publish it to the cloud, right, I won't see the link. I'll just see my architectural file. Okay. So publish settings are extremely important, but also if you're using links, making sure you understand what that means in the BIM 360 environment. I'm going to try my best to keep this focused on model coordination without diving too deep into the weeds of BIM 360, and that's why Scott's episode when he came on last year is great to watch. But I am going to have to obviously touch on it for these reasons. Okay. So the other key to so there's two things that I really want you to keep in mind when you're using Revit Cloud Work Sharing in BIM 360/ACC. The first thing is publish settings are important. Okay, so always keep in mind publish settings. If you're using those tools, if you're using any Revit Cloud or any Autodesk Cloud tools, you need to pay attention to your published settings. And what I mean by that is making sure that you have views selected that you would like to be part of the online viewing experience, so to speak. The other aspect of it is making sure that if you're using links, that they are sitting in the same folder, right? Okay, so, or I shouldn't say that, in the same project. Okay, so if you want to view those links. Okay, so those are kind of the two pieces that I want you, oh, sorry, there's three pieces actually now that I think about it. The other piece that you need to remember is that when you save to Central, that is not the file that you are looking at in BIM 360, okay? Or ACC. It's so confusing. I'm just going to use one. I'm going to say ACC, I think, because that's what I use. I'm just going to say that. Just know that when I say ACC, I'm saying BIM 360 as well, please. I see some chat in there. I'll check it out in a minute. So three things. So the first one is the publish settings. The second one is making sure that if you're using links, they are cloud work shared within the same environment. And the third, what was the third again? Oh, the third is your central file. So if I click save to central right here, okay, and I save this architectural file and synchronize it to the cloud, and you can see here it goes, synchronizing, reloading test, blah, blah, blah. Okay, everyone's initial thoughts are that, okay, great. So once this is done synchronizing, I go over here and I open this model and I see it. I see my changes. No, okay. No, you do not. You'll notice that the last update was on 2.10 and nothing's happening on here, okay? When you want to view something in the BIM 360 or ACC tools, which is model coordination, takeoff, the viewer, you name it, okay? You need to publish your models, okay? And you could do that two different ways. And again, if you watch the video with Scott, he shows you both ways. Scott actually doesn't like this way, and he mentioned it using managed cloud models. I actually kind of do, just because I'm not jumping outside of Revit to do it personally. But but you'll notice I click right here where it says manage cloud models, okay? And then if I go to my sandbox here, and I go to my test project, there's a awful UI of a button of how to upload, and that's why I think most people don't like this. And you have to publish the models. So what you want to think of is you're saving to central, and that central file is updating to everyone that's working on the project. The links are updating for people because they're pulling down the central files and so on and so forth. But the second you want to view something in the cloud viewer, which includes docs, which includes build if you're using it, which includes model coordinate, which includes all these tools, then you have to publish it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I went to manage cloud models, and you could see I can publish using this stupid little arrow here. There it is there. Okay, it says publish latest. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't want to have to wait for anything. But what that'll do is that'll then take your latest version of what you're seeing here, and it's going to now publish that to the viewer, and that is what you're going to see as version 5, right? Version 5 of my model. Okay, so that is extremely important to understand, because it's a concept that for some reason, it took me a while to understand it too, that in your mind you're thinking I saved to central, it's all there. Well, the central file is not the file that you're seeing in BIM 360, okay? And the reason I'm bringing this all up is because we need our file published to BIM 360 to use the model coordinate tool, okay? So if you made a change to it, then you have to click publish in order to see it in the coordination tool. Okay, so why I called it semi-automatic coordination is because if I'm working, I might be saving essential 10 times throughout the day, but maybe at the end of the day is when I publish it. And so as much as but if my MEP folks don't publish theirs, then, and I'm using their models, then I'm actually coordinating against something old. So you still need, and you can set up automatic publishing, but it's still only weekly or daily. I don't know. You have limitations for how you can do it, but either way, so I want you to keep that in mind, because it's not automatic. It's not taking, you saved essential, boom, my clashes are updating. Okay, you need to publish. Okay, so let's just jump into how I'm setting up this file, and then hopefully it gives you an idea of how the Model Coordinate tool how it actually clashes, and how you can set up your model to make it more efficient in clashing. Before I jump into that, I see there are some things going on in the chat, so I'm just going to read real quickly through some of these things here. Hey, Belo from Senegal, what's up, man? Setting up our company's model coordination standards and process at the moment. Definitely, yes, John, welcome. I think Scott is agreeing with most of what I'm saying, which is great. Okay, awesome. Okay, so now let's just look at this file and how I'm setting it up, and then talk about why I'm setting it up this way for coordination, okay? So we jump over to Revit. So what you'll notice is I actually have views set up, okay, and I'm calling them coordination views. And the really cool thing about using Revit files and Revit Cloud Work Sharing is that you can control clash detection through filters and views and visibility settings in specific 3D views. So there's kind of two ways you can approach the actual clash management process, which is if you want to filter out ceilings, for example, and not see the rest of walls or so on and so forth. There is a little bit in Model Coordinate where you can filter it out, but I actually really like filtering out in the source models, because then it makes the clash matrix that I'm going to show you later much more functional. Okay, and so the benefit of using Revit to do this is that you can just work. And as long as you have these coordination views set up correctly with filters or visibility graphs, etc., all you have to do is work, publish, and then clashing is happening. Okay. And in this example, I'm actually going to I'm not even going to use the MEP file to publish. I'm going to publish the MEP file through my Revit, my architectural file. And the reason I'm doing that is just to show you that you can. Step one is just to show you that you can publish links as these coordination space, as these views in coordination space. The other aspect of it is, remember I mentioned if the MEP guys don't publish it, but you're looking at their latest central, then you're actually publishing a later version of what it is anyway. So kind of cool. Okay, so what you'll notice here is I have a 3D view. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Here's ceiling. So this one is just isolated ceilings. Then I have architectural complete. So this is just all of the architectural elements. Okay. Then I have mechanical. All right, and the reason I put from arc in here is just because it's a link in so that we can see it in there. So then I just have this view where I isolated the mechanical ductwork, and then I have a view where I isolated the plumbing. And this is through a link. If I click this as the link, I also added a filter to this so that you can see a nice thing about publishing through Revit views is that it actually maintains and holds the filters, it maintains and holds section boxes, and so on and so forth. So if you need to section off levels of a project, you can do that. Yes, you can technically set all this up, publish to NWCs, dump them on the cloud, and use it just like Navisworks. No problem at all. My whole thing is not having to do that is great, right? If you're just publishing within your normal workflow, then that's just an ideal scenario, right? Trying to avoid publishing NWCs up to the cloud over and doing that whole thing, whatever. So now, and then I also have one called coordination structure only. So then I have one here that's structural. So I have these views set up, and there's the reason why I have them set up this way. When it comes to model coordination, it's kind of like anyone who has used BIM 360 Glue in the past. By the way, if you don't know where model coordination is, when you're in ACC or BIM 360, what you'll see, and I'm actually in BIM 360, believe it or not, just because the test project I'm using, you'll see it says it right there, model coordination. If you don't have that tool, then that's where you need to reach out to Autodesk or your admin to see what the deal is there. All those filters are in your ARC model, correct. So I am in the ARC model with the MEP model linked in, and then I'm just filtering and slicing and dicing the model as I needed in my ARC model. Doesn't have to be that way. You can set it up so that it happens in the MEP. I'm just doing it as an example to show you that this works through links too, which is pretty cool. So what you'll notice is that when I'm in model coordination, it says models on the top here. Okay, it says models. But you'll notice what it's showing is my views. See, it says struct only, plumb, mech, arc, etc. Okay. So what you want to think of when you set up a project this way, and when you're using model coordination, especially within Revit, is and this doesn't have to be this way. You can try and do the conditioning filtering afterwards. But I could tell you from many years of overseeing and being part of the construction side of coordination, it is always easier when you have model to model coordination. Okay, so if you can isolate your systems, if you can isolate your models the way that you need for the coordination, I do it in the authoring tool. It's just so much easier, I promise you. Okay, and so what we have now is we have the ability to set up Revit views as if we said, I want ceilings to clash against just ductwork. We can set up a view of ceilings, we can set up a view of ductwork. And the cool thing about it is when you do it this way, you're actually using this clash matrix that looks really cool, which I'll show you in a minute, as a tool to understand the progress of those resolutions as they go through it. Okay, so just think about that here. Think about, I'm creating these views, and then these views are getting published to BIM 360, and then I'm actually clashing the views together. Okay, yes, you can isolate them by category and filter them afterwards. We're going to go through that. But just think about it that way. If you conceptually set up your models that way and your coordination views that way when you're using this process, it's going to make the back end side of it, almost automatic. Okay, you don't have to do any of the work on the coordination side. You're just working in Revit doing your thing. And that's the goal here, right? So by using three-dimensional views and using the filters conditioning, all the power we have in Revit with Revit models, now this is the process. Ready? So I've got this view set up. As I mentioned, I've got architectural, I got complete, I got ceilings, I got mechanical, I got plumbing, I got structural, I got these good to go, right? I go to my collaborate and publish settings just to make sure and show you guys what I have. I'm only publishing 3D views right now. I'm publishing arc ceilings, arc complete, plumbing, mech, structure only. Okay, and that's what this is bad live set right here. Have it checked, save and close. Okay, I always save to central before I publish. Maybe Scott, you can let me know. Do you have to save to central before you publish? I don't know, but I always do. So I save to central first. I have a feeling you do, but so I'm saving to central, and then I'm not going to publish because I already did it, but I'm going to go to Manage Cloud Models. I'm going to go here. I'm going to say Publish Latest, and I'm going to hit that little button there. Okay, hopefully you can see it. It's way down there, but hit that little button there. And that's it. Okay, now I can go outside of Revit, jump into here, and what's going to happen is in Document Management, you would see this spinning thing showing that it's publishing. Once it's done processing, I would say that there's like three things that I think make this not 100% a replacement for Navisworks yet. One is the amount of time it takes to process Revit models. It takes an ungodly amount of time depending on the size of the model. It just does. For what we're used to as far as speed, it just takes a long time. Whatever, fine. If you do weekly publishing, it's fine. The other is handling model sizes and how you want to slice and dice it. There's that, and then the third is not being able to just simply save views the way that you want to. But we won't dig into that too much. Okay, Scott did say to save to central first. That's what I thought, and I just wanted to make sure before I said it that you do have to save to central first, because I believe what it's doing is publishing the latest version of the central model that you saved. So anyways, okay, so now once it's published, it would be viewable in Docs. So if I go over here and I go to my test project, you could see I go in here and I open this, and you'll notice what I have here is, and this is just Docs, so it's viewable. I have my 5 views that I published. I have my coordination architectural ceilings. I have coordination architectural complete. I have just the ductwork. I called it mech, but it's really just ductwork. And this is a mix of I believe it's fabrication parts. I think I filtered wrong and I got rid of the flex duct, so whatever. And then here's plumbing, which is just plumbing. You'll notice that it did bring the filter over. So I did a filter override where it was a hydronic system as a blue. And then here's structural only. Okay, so then there's structural only. And that's just an issue that I created while I was getting ready for this. So that's fine. So now you see it and you're like, okay, now I want to clash it. Okay, so you go over to model coordination. And ideally, you've waited for it to process, and it automatically did it. Oh, that's the other thing that's annoying. You can't force a clash. You have to basically publish a change and then wait for the model coordination tool to decide it's time to reclash it. It doesn't do it automatically sometimes. It's kind of annoying. That would be nice to just say force clash, but I'm sure there's reasons why they don't do it. So now you'll notice in here, I have those 4 views. But what you'll notice is in this environment, they're being called models. And that's the key. By doing it this way, you're working in Revit and you're creating clash models. So you're not having to do find search sets and all these complicated things. You're not having to filter out clashes after the fact. You can actually just go straight to the clashes because you've sliced your model into it, and it's happening automatically. The great thing about it is it's happening automatically. I mean, look at here. This clash matrix. A lot of people, even when I first saw it, I was skeptical. I was like, what the hell is this thing? Like, why did they do this? Like, do we really need this? But when you set up a model this way, when you set up a model-to-model environment, or a view-to-model environment, whatever, what you're doing is now within this, you can actually see progress of things happening, right? So if I look at this right now, and this is my my mech, and then this is which one is this? My architectural. So there's 14 clashes between my architectural components and my mechanical components, right? And so without even opening the clash tool, right, or the viewer, I can look at this, and if I refreshed it or published the latest, and this went down to 10 or 5, right, you're potentially your coordinate, right? You're making progress on it. And so, just by looking at this, you can start understanding. If I want to dig into it, well, I can actually just click right into that, and it's going to go to that clash detective. It's going to go to that, MEP versus architectural. And you can see here, looking at this, it's mostly just diffusers and things in the roof and walls. These are, for the most part, these probably aren't clashes, but you get the idea. It jumps right into it. Now I can dig into those things. Okay. But what's great about it is you can use that as your guide to sort of continue progressing throughout your project. And so I know a lot of people don't even look at this clash matrix, but when you set up the project correctly, it's huge, right? It has a massive benefit in being able to portray clashes way different than the stupid XML export from Navisworks that no one ever looks at anyways. Okay. I've been testing, Rick just said a model file linking to create coordination model. Anyone else do this? Yes, so part of the reason why, Rick, that I wanted to show the link is that me personally, we actually, and almost always, maybe because we're on the construction side, even though it's in pre-construction, we're usually creating what we call a container file. Which is just a blank model that has all of the files linked into it, and then we have our views and filters set up. So this way, we're live linking in architectural models because usually we're in the same sandbox. But I just have to open my file, and I just have a nice slice and dice, which is not different than we used to do in the Navisworks workflow. We used to have a file like that, and we would export to NWC and then bring in NWC to Navisworks or Glue or whatever it was at the time. The only difference here is we can actually host these cloud Workshare, these container files. And then we're doing the same thing. All I got to do is open in the Revit model and press publish, or I can even, I have to open Save to Central and press publish. But okay, so let's run through. I see some great comments here. Hold on. Can this work if models are being sent from new bridge feature? Yeah, I think Scott will answer that. Yes, should work. That's the beauty of bridge. Coming soon. Bridge is like that thing that I just keep waiting more and more for information about it. So what they're talking about with Bridge is if I have a BIM 360 project as a construction manager and you have a BIM 360 project as an architect, the Bridge is connecting those two those two projects so that you can port files back and forth. For a while, it was just sheets and certain file types that were working. I believe it's getting to the point where it will be 3D models that you can bridge back and forth, which is nice. So to me, it's actually it'll be really beneficial when we get to the point of handover or construction starts, and maybe you have that discussion of who's owning this BIM 360 server. You can kind of own both. So awesome. Okay. The one thing I didn't mention as I went through this is, and again, this is kind of the BIM 360 and ACC basics course kind of thing. That's why I didn't really go over it. But you do have to have a team set up when it comes to design collaboration, and then you do have to have a coordination space set up for your team or your folder. And so in order for this to automatically happen. Okay. So that's the clash matrix. So I published my models. They're here. If I want to check them against each other, it's pretty simple, right? I can also do it this way. If I want to see mechanical versus plumbing, and click open view. So I just selected those two, open the viewer. Now I can just look at those two against each other, not even look in the matrix. And you can see here I am looking at mechanical versus plumbing. Okay. obviously I can see the clashes pretty much right away if this was a bigger building or a different example you wanted. What I mentioned by the filters is, if you guys haven't been in this tool in a while, you do have this model browser thing set up now, which is nice because what you can do is you can create views with specific filters in mind. So what this area does is basically what I'm already doing in the authoring tool in Revit. So if you're getting models and you're not setting it up and publishing them, this is a way that you can actually slice and dice the models and create views that have isolated elements or pull different elements out. So if I wanted to pull like pipe fittings out for some reason, I can pull pipe fittings out, I can save the view, and then I can look at that as a clash result. But for right now, we're not going to worry about that. So I'm going to flip down to the next thing, which is clashes. And you can see this is pretty cool. It's a clash detective program. Some of the things that you can do in it, for those of you who have used Navis before, is you can set a tolerance. You can do above, below, between values, etc. You can also group by parameters. The one thing that annoys me to no end is you cannot group by category with Revit models. But if you bring in a NWC from a Revit model, you can. So I think they tried rectifying this with this whole model browser thing, but I don't know. I feel like I want to group clashes, or I want to group clashes by category first before I start digging down into types usually. But it's okay. So for now, if I search type, I can actually group my clashes by, let's say, type name, which of course is default because they're pipes. So that's not going to be it. So let's do maybe by size, which of course they're all the same, but we'll just do dimension size. So now you can see I can sort my clashes by size, and then I can dig through them that way. And so there's all different ways that you can sort clashes, which is great, right? And that's part of what we do with with Navisworks a lot of times, is just figuring out a way to sort and go through all of those clashes as you go through it. Okay, so awesome. Remember this, and this is all happening automatically, right? You're not bringing in NWC files. You're not setting up a clash report test. You're not going through model A versus model B. You're not setting up search sets. You're right. It's just boom, model versus model, view versus view, good to go. Scott says more grouping coming. Thank you. I just hope categories is one of them, direct from Revit. It blew my mind that NWCs bring in. You have the ability to do NWCs with Revit categories, but in Revit you don't have categories. Whatever. The other thing that I really wish they would update, since you're here, Scott, and whoever watches this from Autodesk in the future, it seems like a pretty simple thing, but it drives me absolutely bonkers, which is the model browser for some reason is not in alphabetical order. It drives me bonkers. Anyways, so we have clashes now. Okay, now what can we do with these clashes? And this is where using the Revit cloud work sharing and creating this environment that I'm setting up is super valuable. Anyone who's been part of clash detection on the construction side, or maybe just coordination on the design side, knows that sometimes the hardest part is actually finding those clashes. I've sat in rooms with 4 or 5 of me's, right? So myself and my teammates who are really good Revit users in each discipline within a file, and we had a screen up with clashes in Navisworks. And even then, if I was sitting there with the plumbing model and the other guy was at the duct model, right? Even then, it took a ridiculous amount of time to find that clash location in our authoring tool, right? That we're sitting there to fix. It's one of those things that just doesn't work out efficiently, the way we want it to. I mean, obviously, if you're in the area and you get it set up, but as you're bombing through clashes, it's just one of those things. So one of the things that's great is I can take these clashes now, and I can make this without a clash, but I'm going to do it with a clash. So I can go here and I can say, okay, I want to group it. Instead of grouping it by by size, I'm going to group it by pipe. And so this clash right here, right? So I'm just going to check the box, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to tell somebody this information, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click issue. Okay, so I'm going to take this clash and I'm going to elevate it to an issue. And if I want, I can change the name of it. I can change the due date. I can assign it to someone, give it a due date, all this stuff. But before I do that, I have to place a pushpin. Okay, and this pushpin is geolocated in the model, so it has an XYZ. The only thing you have to keep in mind is when you want to view that pushpin, depending on the setup, and the setup we're using here, it's most likely going to be viewable in those specific 3D views that Revit set up. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but you'll see what I mean when I do this. So I'm going to place the push pin right here, and I placed it specifically on the duct and not the pipe for a reason. So let's see. So you see it says clash. So now I can give it a description. I can name it something if there's locations. I can give it a due date. I can assign it to somebody. All that good stuff. I can give it a root cause, which you can actually add all these parameters here, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to click create. And you notice what it did is it actually it removes it from the clash detection area, which is pretty neat. So it's gone there, and it actually exists in the assigned area now. Okay, or in the issues if you go to issues, right? So if you go to issues, it's there, but then it actually pulls it on its own in clashes, and you can go to assigned, and you can see where the clashes are assigned. So it's a nice little area where you can start picking out of these 4,000 clashes and picking the most important ones and throwing them, into an area where maybe these are the important ones. Okay, and because it's an issue that is geolocated, when you click it, it'll jump into the model. It'll show the issue. It'll zoom into the location. That was the other issue that I created. And if I click here, you can go through it. So you can go through and sort of filter through these issues in this tool. So if I'm myself and I want to go through, I can just filter the issues that I'm related to and go in here. But again, this solves the taking a clash and elevating to an issue, and it solves locating that and tracking that, but it doesn't solve, pulling it up in the authoring tool and finding it. Okay. And so, in order to help rectify that, what Autodesk created is a plugin for Revit, which I'm assuming will just eventually be delivered with Revit, but for right now it's a plugin. And so it's called the issues tool. And so up here on the tab, you can see I have issues. And here it is here. Okay. And what this does is this actually connects to your project. And so if I go to overview now, what you'll notice is I have 2 open issues, right? And I can go through them. This is a nice little overview, and this will just tell you sort of the overall project overview. But then there's a manage issues tool where you can actually display the push pins and you can display the issues. So you'll notice I actually see this push pin, which I put in a while ago here. If I click issue number 5, you'll notice it opened into this view. And this is where I'm talking about sort of seeing the push pins in Revit, depending on where you place them. If you place them on an element that exists in that model that was published, or that view that was published, that's kind of where the push pin exists. I think there's a way to see all the push pins in one area. I don't remember. But you can see the push pins, and then you can actually dig through and look at that. And that was what I just created now, real time, right? So that helps big time in being able to locate and actually I think is associated models how you get the multiple push pins? No, that's just the links. If you want to see push pins from links as they're going through, but because I have them in here. So just to keep in mind, pay attention to where you're placing the push pins. I feel like, I don't know on the back end how it works, but I feel like it would be better if you can place them geolocated but not have them associated to an element. The other thing to keep in mind is I think if you delete that element, it actually deletes the push pin. I don't remember. But now you can actually see it in your authoring tool. So I can go through and I can say, okay, well, what's the issue here? I read it. It says, oh, Jeff, there's a plumbing pipe in the way. And hopefully I have a view where I see everything. And and then I can fix what it is, right? Or maybe that view pulls it. So super cool and super powerful way to hopefully manage those issues as they come along. Let me just check the chat real quick because I went through a whole bunch there. Let's see. Notice finding clashes is easy. It's the tough part. Yes, Alexander, very very true. Finding clashes is easy, but the tough part is definitely yeah. And Scott did confirm that pins are associated to elements, so that is a little thing to keep in mind. It's that they are associated to elements, which is a little bit of a problem. And then John asked if push pins are visible in plan views, and I believe when it comes to the tool, the issues tool, that's not the case. If you place an issue in a sheet view, then it exists there. There's some caveats to the pins, so just be wary of that. But it's changing every single day. So, definitely. So, Somebody asked if Turner Construction is using Autodesk Model Coordination. Yes, I work for Turner, and that's why that's why I know all about this, is because we've been using it pretty heavily. I will say that there's multiple versions of how we're using it. There's fully model coordination, or there's a hybrid approach where we may have a Navis model that is bringing down the files, so it's kind of like a old glue setup where you're using cloud models but using them within Navisworks. You can still use the issues tool and everything. And even in that environment, we're still using the Model Coordinate tool as a QA/QC over the Navisworks tool. But yes, definitely using it. This is the part I wish was automated. There's a lot of easy filtering checks for groups, filters that you could apply automated sets to. So yes, Guy Taco, you are right. Can you use multi-pins for one issue? No, I don't think you can use multi-pins for one issue. What I showed you guys there was actually creating an issue from a clash, which is a little different than just creating an issue. So let me do this. Just since you guys seem to be interested in the issue tool itself, because I'm interested in it too. The idea that you can push this, and I didn't mention too that this also the issues get pushed to Navis too if you set up a NWF that's cloud hosted with all the cloud models pulling to it, which is pretty neat. And so if I was to go to, let's say, structure, plumbing, and mech. So I was creating an issue from a clash, which is a little different. Oh, that's all we got, huh? I was surprised we didn't have more structure than that. Which is a little different than just going to the issues tool and saying create issue. Either way, you have to place a push pin. And what you'll notice is as I'm hovering over with the push pin, it's highlighting elements. And so the push pin is related to elements. And so let's just keep that in mind. So if I do it on this element here, which is the AHU, then it's going to be viewable in that view, that AHU view that I was talking about there. And so I don't know. Scott may be able to tell in the chat there if I think you can only view this push pin in the Revit issues tool. You can only view this push pin if you go to that specific view or model, depending on how you're doing the upload. So for this, I'll name this one again too. I'll say AHU needs to move. Move it now. Move it now. And say create. All right. So I just made another issue here. So in the web platform, there's multiple areas where you can actually see the issues, all of them in a specific view. However, in the authoring tools, it seems to be a little different. So you can see I can see all three of these push pins, and I can click them, and it's going to show me. Notice how this isolated and highlighted a clash because I elevated a clash to an issue, as opposed to this guy here, which will just isolate the element or even just zoom in on the element because that wasn't associated to a clash result. And so that's just a little caveat with the issues tool. But so if I click this, you can see that one shows the clash, that one shows the clash. This just shows a general issue. However, if I was to go back in Revit and press reload here and get all my issues back, you'll see here's number 6. And if I click this, it's going to open my MEP one, and you can see there it is there. Right, so there's the issue. So it comes down, it's connected quickly, but there are some caveats in what I'm talking about here with as far as the views and so on and so forth. If the NWF has issues or pins, will it disappear in Navis if the elements are changed in Revit if the clash is resolved? If the clash is resolved, I don't think so. I think if you elevate a clash and the clash is resolved, I believe the issue will stay solved. But if you just put a push pin and it's not elevated from a clash, I don't think it looks for clashes and you have to manually close it. I believe is the case. Can you have one pin associated with 2 clashing elements? I do not believe so. And everyone's giving Scott their wish list for some of these things, which is awesome. Awesome. Okay. So now when you think about it, right? So we ran through this setup. And I'm kind of going down the road of all these BIM 360 tools. But now if I have it set up this way and I go through and I make some changes, right? So I go to my overall view and I want to modify these changes. All I have to do is, I move this wall over, right? Oops, sorry, I just F1 myself. Oh man. It's been a while since I've done that. Okay, so if I move this over and I update the steel and maybe I update some of this stuff, all I've got to do is save to central, right? And then go publish latest, right? Go to collaborate. Once it's done, say publish latest, and then my coordination is there. I can just go now. I'm model coordination. If whoever it is, there's no other steps. That's it, right? The thing is ready to go. And so that alone is huge, right? That's a huge. So now I just saved essential. So I go to collaborate. I go to manage cloud models and I press publish, and boom, it's published, and there it is. Now it's viewable in the browser. It's viewable by non-Revit users. It's viewable on the iPad, and so on and so forth. And the clashing, that whole part of it, if you set it up right, can basically be done on its own, which is freaking awesome. Okay. So I think that's the overall view, the overview of everything. I mean, the three things to take away from it really are, make sure your published settings are set up. Make sure that if you're using links, they exist in the same project as a Revit Cloud Workshared model. And then, why do I keep forgetting number 3? I don't remember what number 3 was, but you can roll back and see what number 3 was there. But also your Revit views are what you want to use as your model to model clashing in this process. If you're using a non-cloud Revit Workshared file, you can still do similar stuff like this, because you can still set up published settings and you can just upload the file, just like you would in the viewer, or so on and so forth. Okay. No, the pin will disappear when the status of the pin is set. Yes. You can manually say solved, resolved, working on, comments, all that good stuff as well. Make sure the model locations are actually. Oh, so actually that's a great point, Guy Taco. So when it comes to, that's always an issue with coordination in general. It's a bane of my existence is model coordinates and alignments and stuff, right? So ideally, you're setting up your Revit projects correctly with origin points and not moving links. Please, if you're watching the show now or in the future, don't ever move a link. Okay. Back to the scheduled programming. So what you could do is you could, and I'll jump into this. The one thing that the Model Coordinate tool has improved on over time is the ability to transform files, transform models. And obviously, ideally, you're setting up from the get-go. But if you're working with consultants, if you're working with subcontractors, there's sometimes, like steel, for example, steel subcontractors. I don't know what you guys do when you start your files, but it's almost impossible to get your stuff to line up. Even I try everything, even if being proactive about it. But what you can do is you can do some transforms, and even if you're using Navis as a hybrid model to pull down, then you still want to do the transforms in the cloud when it comes to the collaboration aspect of it. So if I click transform here, what you can see is I have some interesting things, although if you notice, it's only letting me select the model and not the view. And so that is one of the differences between publishing from Revit or exporting NWCs. I would imagine that these would line up if you're exporting from the same model. But if you had multiple files on here, you would be able to. And we'll notice is you do have a coordinate system here. You have the move into view is very helpful. It says move into view. So if you have something that's 4 miles away, you click move into view, it moves it to the view, which is freaking awesome. And then you can also copy from another model. So if you set up coordinates, you can copy it into the other model, and you do have a point to point, which is nice. So you click one point, click another point, and say move here. The one caveat I will give you is that you can rotate a model, but you can only rotate a model in plan view. So on the z-axis, I guess, is the rotation. You cannot rotate a model horizontally. So again, just to show you, you can rotate it like this. You can't rotate it like this. That doesn't sound like it would be something you want to do, but I could tell you from bringing in meshes or point clouds, that's something that would be really helpful, would be to be able to rotate in both directions. Just an FYI there. So you can do it on the cloud side. And if you're going to transform models, even in the Navisworks hybrid approach, make sure the transform is happening on the cloud and not in your local authoring tool when it comes to pulling down the cloud files. But ideally, set it all up correctly in Revit in the beginning. Let's see. Clay Richardson just asked another question. Let me just read it here. Clay asked if we're using Build as well. We at Turner, I should say. We pretty much use Procore exclusively for document management, but we are and we'll be testing out the full Build environment. But I won't. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. But yeah, so yes, most of our document management system is on Procore. However, we're looking into Build as well. Let's see. Just want to double check here. You can also model coordinate a 3D section box view. Yes. So Scott did make a great point, which is kind of what I was getting at with the whole filtering or view-based system. So if you have a multi-story building, for example, a lot of time with clash detection, you want to slice and dice it and maybe look at it on a floor-by-floor basis, or maybe it's a long building. And so in the past, in the Navis workflow, you would create a bunch of section boxes and export those as NWCs, bring them in and look at them that way. Same thing applies here. You would set up, so if I wanted to, for some reason, if I wanted a view that only had let's do this, the left half of this, I'll duplicate this guy. I'll call it arc complete part A. And if I put in a section box here, that now if I was to publish this, it would hold that section box for that specific model. The same applies for levels. Same applies for everything that you're doing there. So again, a benefit there of the sort of Revit workflow is that once you set those things up, it's just a matter of saving essential and publishing up. The one thing I will give you guys a little warning of is even when you're saving views in the clash detection tool or the model coordination tool, it does not save your section planes. Super annoying, I know. So hopefully that's something that changes over time. I know I've expressed my disdain for that not being a feature. So hopefully more people have. And so what I mean by that is, if you were to go into the arc complete and let's say you want to see architectural, mechanical, and structural in one view, or maybe let's see all the models. So let's do architectural, mechanical, and plumbing. And opening up here, you could see this guy. Here we go. And so when you're doing this type of stuff, what you may end up doing, right, if I'm looking at these clashes, a lot of times you may end up creating a section plane, right, and saying, I want to cut like somewhere around here, right, and then I want to save this as a view to say like level 1 or level 2. So if I go level 1, click OK, save as view. I'm going to keep it private for now. And you can see the view is saved. I'm like, great, now I can go back and check this later on in life. And if I go to views and I click level 1, what you'll notice is that all it has is the models, the models that I had there. And I think it might save the filters over here too, but it doesn't save my section plane. And even if I turn my section plane on, it actually doesn't turn back on in the same location. Pretty sucky. So with that, with that in mind, and keeping in mind a Revit-centric workflow with this, you can do a lot of that in the Revit side of things if you'd like to. But hopefully that's a feature rolling out soon. Awesome. Just checking the chat here. Sweet, yeah. And yes, who is it? Tesla. Thank you for your walkthrough. No problem. Maybe I'll try and diagram it or something for the blog post tomorrow. But hopefully it was helpful for you guys to see the process, and I try my best to bring it to the top level so you just understand the process and the main points instead of the details. The challenging thing with BIM 360/ACC is all the other caveats to it. But if you keep it simple the way I'm showing you here, ideally it's something that you guys can use. What's been everyone's main source for improving their workflow, which validated a standardized approach? Booing. Sorry, I've been laughing at Scott booing Procore. I have no allegiances. Scott, you do. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I'm gonna leave a link below to Scott's episode from last year where we overviewed the overall ACC BIM 360 platform itself. I'm gonna leave a link to when I overviewed the coordination process. and I urge you guys to try this, especially my design partners, my architectural friends. Part of the reason why I'm so adamant about this is I just, and I've been there, I've been in your shoes. I don't think enough of it's happening during the design phases, and I want to make sure that that's the case, because we have the tools now to do it, and why would we not make buildings that work? Let me just double check here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Just checking, the diagram would be amazing. Yes, I will try to pull together a new topic next week with a guest, so I don't have to speak the entire time. But I'm glad that you guys enjoyed this. And when am I going to be? So Scott, funny story. I wanted to have you come on for this topic, but some schedules got rearranged for the specific live guests this season, and I needed to fill something in for this week, so here we are. And it was something that I've been wanting to do anyway, so next time you'll come on, I promise you. Maybe when you fix a few of those things that we mentioned, I'll have you come on in the spring, and we can talk about all the great section planes that can hold, and the ability to refresh and sort through, and add folders to the models and good stuff. Anyways, and as usual, guys, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Comment below in this video afterwards with questions. I'm pretty accessible, but I'm hoping to get you guys using this and giving me feedback on what you think of as far as this process is concerned. And if you're interested in joining the BIM After Dark community, definitely head over to community.bimafterdark.com. Take advantage of this lifetime sale, and then you can hang out with me even more in there. So with all of that, thanks, guys. I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful night and a great weekend. And with that, I want to bid you adieu. Thanks, guys.